Ladies and gentlemen, there comes a season in your life when explaining yourself becomes exhausting. You've talked enough. You've proven enough. You've poured, given, and stretched yourself thin just to be understood. And yet, the room stayed the same. The respect didn't grow. The value didn't increase. That is the moment when silence is no longer weakness. It becomes wisdom. In 2026, silence is not about hiding. It is about withdrawing access. It is about recognizing that not everyone deserves front row seats to your process. Some people only understand your worth when the benefit of your presence is removed. They don't miss your words. They miss the impact you carried. You see, constant availability cheapens value. When you are always there, always responding, always explaining, people assume you'll never leave. They stop listening. They stop appreciating. They stop honoring. Silence disrupts that comfort. Silence introduces consequence. Silence teaches people what your presence actually meant. This is not about ego. This is about alignment. When you stay silent, you stop negotiating your worth with people who have already decided not to see it. You stop begging rooms to feel your fire. You conserve your energy for places that can actually hold your weight. There is power in absence. Absence forces reflection. Absence exposes dependency. Absence reveals who benefited from you more than they valued you. When you step back, the noise you once filled becomes noticeable. The gap you once covered becomes uncomfortable, and suddenly they feel it. Silence matures you. It trains discipline in a world addicted to reaction. Anyone can respond, anyone can clap back, anyone can explain, but it takes strength to pause. It takes growth to let results speak. It takes confidence to know that what's meant for you won't require constant visibility. In 2026, you are not trying to be loud to be relevant. You are becoming so grounded that your absence shifts atmospheres. You are learning that peace is more powerful than proving a point. You are understanding that some battles are won by walking away and letting time deliver the lesson. Let them wonder. Let them ask. Let them feel the silence where your effort used to be. Because the truth is, these people don't always appreciate consistency. They appreciate contrast. And silence creates contrast. When you return, if you return, it won't be to explain yourself. It will be with clarity, authority, and results. If you never return, your absence will still speak louder than any speech you could have given. So stay silent, not because you are weak, because you are becoming precise. Stay silent, not because you have nothing to say, but because your life is preparing to say it for you. Stay silent until they feel your absence, and by the time they do, you will already be somewhere higher, calmer, and unbothered. Silence is often misunderstood. In a world that rewards noise, reaction, and constant visibility, quietness is mistaken for fear, hesitation, or a lack of confidence. But silence, when chosen intentionally, is not retreat. It is not surrender. Silence is a strategy, not a sign of weakness. It is one of the most disciplined and powerful decisions a person can make. True strength does not announce itself every time it enters a room. Real power does not feel the need to defend itself in every conversation. The strongest people understand that not every moment deserves their voice. Every challenge deserves their explanation, and not every provocation deserves their response. Silence becomes the space where wisdom operates, clarity sharpens, and where control is regained. When you speak too often, your words lose weight. When you react to everything, you give away your power. When you master silence, you decide when and where your energy flows. Silence allows you to observe rather than expose. It gives you the advantage of seeing patterns, intentions, and truths that noise would normally drown out. While others are busy proving themselves, the silent strategist is studying the field. Silence protects your vision. Not everyone needs to know what you are building, planning, or becoming. The moment you announce your goals to the wrong audience, you invite doubt, comparison, jealousy, and unnecessary opinions. Silence shields your growth from premature judgment. It allows ideas to mature before being tested by the world. What grows in silence develops deeper roots. There is also emotional intelligence in silence. Responding instantly is easy. Reacting emotionally is natural. But restraint is learned. Silence gives you time to process instead of explode. It prevents you from saying words you can never take back. Many conflicts escalate not because of the problem itself, but because of careless words spoken in heated moments. Silence interrupts that cycle, buys you time, and time often reveals a better response or shows that no response is needed at all. Silence also exposes truth. When you stop explaining yourself, you see who really understands you. When you stop chasing people with words, you see who walks toward you without being called. When you fall quiet, people reveal their intentions, their expectations, and their dependence. Some only value you when you are useful. Some only listen when you stop speaking. Silence removes the mask. In leadership, silence is often more commanding than speech. A leader who speaks constantly risks being ignored. A leader who chooses words carefully commands attention. When silence enters a room, people lean in. They pay attention. They sense depth. Silence communicates confidence, the confidence that you do not need validation, applause, agreement to stand firm in who you are. Silence also builds inner strength. When you are no longer addicted to being heard, you become anchored in who you are. You stop measuring your worth by reactions, likes, or responses. You become comfortable with stillness. Stillness reveals truths about yourself that noise never could. In silence, you confront your fears, refine your purpose, and strengthen your discipline. There are seasons when silence is necessary for growth. Just like seeds are planted underground before they ever break the surface, transformation often happens out of sight. No applause, no recognition, just consistent work, quiet resilience, and faith in the process. Those who rush to be seen often sacrifice depth. Those who are willing to be silent often emerge unshakable. Silence is also a boundary. It is a way of saying no without explaining. It is choosing peace over performance. It is refusing to engage in arguments that drain your spirit. You do not owe everyone an explanation. You do not owe every critic a response. Sometimes silence is the clearest message you can send. People often mistake silence for submission, but it is quite the opposite. Silence is self-control in action. It is choosing long-term respect over short-term satisfaction. It is understanding that your energy is finite and your focus is valuable. You stop fighting every battle because you realize not every battle is yours to fight. As you grow, your relationship with silence changes. Once felt uncomfortable becomes empowering. What once felt like invisibility becomes privacy. You begin to understand that not everything meaningful needs to be announced. Your consistency will speak. Your results will speak. Your absence will speak when your presence was once taken for granted. Silence does not mean you have nothing to say. It means you are choosing when it matters. It means your voice has purpose, not impulse behind it. When you finally speak, people listen, not because you are loud, but because you are intentional. In a noisy world, silence becomes rare, and rarity creates value. Those who master silence move differently. They are not rushed. They are not reactive. They are not easily shaken. They understand that sometimes the most powerful move is to step back, stay quiet, and let time, truth, and results do the talking. In a world driven by constant visibility, overexposure has become a silent thief of value. People are encouraged to show everything, say everything, be everywhere at all times. The louder the presence, the more relevant it is assumed to be. Yet history, psychology, real influence tell a different story. Overexposure does not increase worth, it slowly erodes it. When something is always available, always accessible, always explaining itself, it begins to feel ordinary. And what feels ordinary is rarely respected. Value has always been tied to scarcity. What is rare is protected. What is limited is appreciated. What requires effort to reach is often treated with care. Overexposure removes that natural boundary. When your time, energy, ideas, and emotions are constantly on display, people stop treating them as valuable. They begin to expect access instead of appreciating it. Familiarity, when unchecked, breeds not connection, but entitlement. When you are always present, your presence loses its impact. When you always speak, your words lose their weight. When you constantly explain yourself, people stop listening because they know another explanation is coming. Overexposure trains others to take you for granted, creates a dynamic where your effort is assumed rather than acknowledged. The mind adjusts quickly to abundance and slowly to absence. Overexposure also blurs authority. Authority is not built by constant interaction, it is built by intentional distance. Leaders, thinkers, and influential figures throughout time have understood this truth. They did not make themselves endlessly available. They spoke when it mattered. They appeared when it counted. Their silence created anticipation, and their presence carried gravity. When access is unlimited, authority dissolves into familiarity. In personal relationships, overexposure can quietly weaken respect. When you give unlimited emotional access without boundaries, people may consume your support without valuing your well-being. When you are always available, absence is never felt. And if your absence is never felt, your presence is rarely cherished. Over time, this imbalance leads to emotional exhaustion and unspoken resentment. Overexposure also invites unnecessary judgment. The more you reveal, the more opinions you attract, many of them uninformed, biased, or driven by insecurity. Not everyone has earned the right to understand your journey, your struggles, or your dreams. When too much is shared too soon, your growth becomes vulnerable to criticism before it has had time to strengthen. Some seeds fail not because they were weak, because they were exposed too early. In the digital age, overexposure has become normalized. Constant updates, instant reactions, and public processing of private thoughts are encouraged as authenticity. But authenticity without discretion becomes self-sabotage. Every emotion needs an audience. Not every lesson needs to be broadcast. Not every success needs immediate validation. You seek external confirmation, the more your internal value becomes dependent on reaction rather than truth. There is also a psychological cost to overexposure. When you are constantly visible, you feel pressured to perform instead of live. You begin to curate yourself for acceptance rather than align with your values. Over time, this creates fatigue, anxiety, and a fractured sense of self. Value cannot grow where there is no space for stillness and reflection. Restraint, on the other hand, builds intrigue. When people do not know everything about you, they pay closer attention. When your words are limited, they are listened to more carefully. When your availability has boundaries, it signals self-respect, and self-respect invites respect from others. You teach people how to treat you by how much access you give them. Overexposure also weakens impact. If you are always reacting, your responses blend into the noise. But when you choose silence or limited engagement, your actions stand out. Impact is not about frequency, it is about timing. A single, well-timed appearance or statement can outweigh 1,000 constant updates. The mind remembers contrast, not consistency alone. In professional life, overexposure can stall growth. Constantly seeking attention, approval, or visibility can distract from mastery. Real value is built in focused, often unseen work. Those who spend too much time being seen often spend too little time becoming skilled. When skill finally meets visibility, value multiplies. Visibility without depth fades quickly. Overexposure also erodes mystery, and mystery fuels respect. Mystery does not mean deception, it means discernment. It means understanding that privacy is not secrecy and silence is not insecurity. Some things grow better in quiet spaces. Some strengths develop best without spectators. When you reduce overexposure, you reclaim control. You choose when to speak, when to appear, and when to withdraw. You stop living on demand and start living with intention. Your energy becomes concentrated instead of scattered. And concentrated energy always carries more force. People begin to notice the difference. They feel the absence when you are not there. They listen more closely when you do speak. They value your time because it is no longer guaranteed. Over time, your presence becomes meaningful again. Not because you demanded respect, but because you created conditions for it. Overexposure reduces perceived value because it removes boundaries, scarcity, and intention. Value thrives where there is discipline, restraint, and purpose. Choosing less exposure, you allow your work, character, and results to speak louder than constant visibility ever could. When you are always there, always available, always giving, your impact blends into the background of people's lives. It becomes routine, familiar, expected. When you step away, when your presence is removed, something powerful happens. Space is created. And in that space, awareness is born. Absence creates awareness of your true impact in ways that words, effort, and consistency alone never can. Human nature adjusts quickly to what is constant. We adapt to support, kindness, reliability, and effort until they feel like fixtures rather than contributions. When something becomes a fixture, it is no longer consciously appreciated. This is not cruelty, it is psychology. The mind notices change more than stability. It recognizes loss more clearly than possession. That is why absence becomes such a profound teacher. When you are no longer present, the silence you to leave behind begins to speak. People notice the tasks you once handled without praise. They feel the emotional support that is suddenly missing. They experience the gap where your energy, structure, or leadership used to be. What was once invisible becomes obvious. Absence turns unnoticed contributions into undeniable realities. While you are present, intentions are often blurred. Some people stay close because they value you. Others stay because they benefit from you. When you step away, the difference becomes clear. Those who truly care will feel the loss deeply. Those who only consumed your energy will feel inconvenience, not connection. Absence exposes truth without confrontation. There is a quiet dignity in stepping back. It is not punishment, manipulation, or ego. It is allowing reality to reveal itself naturally. You stop explaining your worth and let experience do the work. You stop reminding people of what you bring and allow them to feel what is missing. This shift requires confidence because it means trusting that your impact was real enough to be felt without your presence reinforcing it. Absence also restores balance. When you are always present, you may overfunction while others underfunction. Your reliability can unintentionally enable dependence. When you step away, forced to step up, responsibilities are redistributed, effort is recalibrated. In that process, people begin to understand how much weight you are carrying. In leadership, absence is often the clearest measure of influence. Leaders' impact is not defined by how loud they are in the room, but by how well things function when they are not. If everything collapses in your absence, your contribution becomes undeniable. If clarity, discipline, and values remain, your influence has been deeply embedded. Either way, absence reveals the truth. Absence also protects your self-worth. Constant presence can lead to over-giving, burnout, and resentment, especially when effort goes unacknowledged. Stepping back gives you space to breathe, reflect, and recalibrate. It reminds you that your value is not tied to constant service or availability. You begin to see yourself not as a resource to be drained, but as a force to be respected. There is also growth that happens in absence on both sides. You grow by learning that you do not need to be everywhere to matter. Others grow by learning not to take what is good for granted. Absence creates emotional maturity when presence has been enabling complacency. In personal relationships, absence can awaken appreciation that words failed to inspire. When your calls stop coming, your messages stop arriving, and your presence no longer fills the room, people reflect. They remember how you listened, supported, organized, and showed up. The contrast between presence and absence sharpens memory and deepens awareness. Absence also refines your boundaries. It teaches you that you are allowed to step back without guilt. You are allowed to choose peace over performance. You are allowed to protect your energy without justifying it. When people feel your absence, they also learn that access to you is a privilege, not a guarantee. In a noisy world, absence is powerful because it interrupts routine. It forces attention inward and outward, slows the pace enough for realization to occur. People often do not understand the value of water until the well runs dry. Absence is that dry moment that brings clarity. Importantly, absence is not about disappearing forever. It is about intentional distance. It is about choosing when to be present and when to withdraw. It is about understanding that constant presence can dilute impact. Thoughtful absence can amplify it. When you return after absence, if you choose to return, you do so with renewed authority. Your presence feels heavier, more grounded, more respected. People listen differently. They engage more intentionally. The dynamic has shifted, not because you demanded it, because awareness has been created. And if you do not return, your impact still remains. Your absence becomes a permanent reminder of what once existed and what is now missing. In that way, absence continues to speak long after you are gone. Absence creates awareness of your true impact because it removes comfort, routine, and assumption. It reveals contribution, exposes truth, and restores value. In learning when to step back, you allow others and yourself to finally see the weight of what you carried all along. Everyone deserves access to your process. in a world that glorifies transparency, oversharing, and constant updates. It is easy to forget that your journey is yours first. Your vision, your strategy, your methods, and your personal growth are sacred. They are the foundation upon which your future is built. Allowing everyone into your process may feel like connection, but more often it is exposure, vulnerability, and sometimes even sabotage. Not every listener deserves the inner workings of your mind, your dreams, or your daily grind. Your process is your power, and power must be protected. Your process is private because it is the soil in which your success grows. When you give unrestricted access, the soil becomes trampled. Ideas are prematurely judged. Strategies are criticized before they are tested. Dreams are exposed to doubt before they have taken root. Not everyone has the vision to understand your path, and not everyone has the integrity to respect it. Sharing too much with the wrong people is like giving away the seeds of your harvest before the plants have matured. Some will walk away. Others may even take what they see for themselves. Protecting your process ensures your efforts remain your own until they are ready to bear fruit. There is also a psychological advantage to keeping your process private. When people know every step you take, they begin to judge your every move. Every small mistake is amplified, every minor delay becomes a reason for criticism, and every decision is scrutinized. Everyone has the context or the foresight to understand why you move as you do. If you allow them inside your process, they will measure your journey by their limitations, not your potential. Keeping your process to yourself frees you from external pressure, allowing you to move decisively and confidently. Not everyone has the capacity to celebrate your growth. Some people only offer commentary, comparison, competition. They may applaud when convenient, but dismiss or undermine your efforts when inconvenient. By limiting access to your process, you control who is invested in your journey and who merely observes. Your energy is precious, and it must be preserved for those who are aligned with your vision, not diluted among those who are indifferent or even antagonistic. Boundaries around your process also cultivate respect. When you reveal everything, you are training others to expect transparency and accessibility at all times. They begin to assume that your methods, struggles, and plans are public property. When you maintain discretion, you demonstrate that your time, effort, and expertise have boundaries. Respect is born from recognition of value and the understanding that value is not always freely available. People respect what they cannot always access. Your process is also a reflection of your unique approach, your creativity, and your problem solving. Sharing it with everyone risks diluting your uniqueness. Everyone can appreciate innovation, foresight, or strategy. Some will mimic, some will critique without understanding. Some will simply ignore the work you put in. Protecting your process preserves originality and ensures that your breakthroughs remain yours until they are ready to be presented on your terms. Limiting access also teaches patience, both for you and for others. You learn to trust the timing of your growth, knowing that results will eventually communicate what words cannot. Others learn that access to your brilliance is earned, not granted freely. This mutual understanding strengthens relationships, professional and personal alike. Those who are truly aligned will wait, observe, and eventually recognize the value of your efforts. Those who are not aligned will naturally drift away. In this way, discretion filters out noise and creates clarity. Not sharing your process protects your mental and emotional energy. Explaining, defending, justifying every step is draining. The more you reveal, the more you expose yourself to opinions, criticisms, and distractions. Your energy is finite. Everyone deserves to tap into it. By reserving access, you safeguard your focus, motivation, and determination. You allow yourself the freedom to fail, learn, grow privately without outside interference. Often, the most significant leaps forward happen in silence and solitude, away from prying eyes. Your process is also a matter of timing. Success, recognition, understanding are often better received after results have been achieved rather than during the struggle. When people see outcomes without witnessing the entire process, they are more likely to respect the effort and creativity involved. If you share the process too early, results can feel underwhelming or misunderstood. Timing is everything. Your work deserves to be showcased when it has substance, not prematurely dissected while it is still evolving. In business, in leadership, and in personal growth, those who understand the importance of guarding their process consistently outperform those who overshare. They protect their strategies from competitors, their motivations from cynics, and their energy from leeches. Maintain a sense of mystery that amplifies their influence. Overexposure, by contrast, can lead to diminished returns, stolen ideas, or misplaced trust. Protecting your process is an act of foresight. It is the recognition that not everyone in your orbit has your best interest at heart. Limiting access does not mean isolation. It does not mean hiding or being secretive for its own sake. It means being intentional. It means understanding that your journey is not a public performance, but a personal mission. It means curating who is allowed into your circle, who sees your methods, and who is invited to witness your struggles and successes. Intentional sharing ensures that when people are allowed in, their presence contributes positively to your growth rather than undermining it. Finally, protecting your process cultivates mastery. Mastery is born from deep focus, repetition, and private refinement. If every step is exposed, you risk distraction and dilution of effort. Quiet labor behind success is often invisible precisely because it is intimate, meticulous, and focused. By keeping your process for yourself, you honor the discipline required to achieve mastery, allowing your work to speak for itself when the time is right. Not everyone deserves access to your process because your journey is sacred, your energy is precious, and your growth is intentional. Protecting it is not arrogance, it is strategy. It is not secrecy, it is wisdom. It is the recognition that your impact, your creativity, and your potential are far too valuable to be diluted by indiscriminate exposure. When you protect your process, you create space for excellence, focus results to flourish on your terms, at your pace, and in your own power. Peace is more powerful than constant explanation. It is a truth that runs counter to the culture of reaction, argument, and constant justification that surrounds us. In a world where everyone feels entitled to an opinion, where every misunderstanding demands a response, where every misstep calls for immediate clarification, peace stands apart. It is quiet, grounded, and unshakable. While constant explanation may temporarily appease, peace builds lasting respect, clarity, and influence. When we are compelled to explain ourselves constantly, we give away our power. Every word spent defending our actions, choices, or character is energy diverted from creation, growth, and focus. The mind becomes preoccupied with perception rather than reality. We measure ourselves against others' judgments, not against our own standards. We react to every criticism, correct every misinterpretation, and justify every decision. In doing so, inadvertently validate opinions that do not matter and inflate the voices that may not have our best interests at heart. Peace, on the other hand, requires restraint. It chooses stillness over reaction, reflection over immediate reply, and confidence over fear of judgment. Peace is not passive. It is not apathy. It is intentional calm. It is the understanding that your value, integrity, and purpose are not dependent on external validation. When you are at peace, you no longer feel the need to explain yourself to those who are unwilling to understand. You recognize that some people will never see your perspective, no matter how carefully articulated. You accept that opinions exist, and you allow them to exist without compromising your own equilibrium. In essence, peace protects your mental and emotional boundaries in a way that explanation never can. Constant explanation also creates noise. The more you justify, the less impact your words carry. People become desensitized to your reasoning because it is repeated too frequently or delivered defensively. Over time, the very act meant to clarify becomes background chatter, lost in the flood of information that saturates modern life. Peace, by contrast, communicates more effectively than words. It conveys confidence. It communicates that you are grounded, unbothered, and intentional. People notice the calm demeanor more than any defensive speech. And in noticing it, they begin to respect it. Peace allows outcomes to speak. Instead of spending energy defending yourself, you focus on your work, your craft, and your purpose. Results are the ultimate explanation. far more persuasive than repeated words. When people witness the consistency, quality, and impact of your actions, they are compelled to acknowledge it. You do not need to convince anyone through argument or elaboration. The proof becomes evident through lived experience. This is why the most powerful people often speak less. Their actions, measured and purposeful, render explanations unnecessary. In relationships, peace is transformative. Constantly explaining yourself in friendships, family dynamics, or professional environments can erode trust and breed resentment. Places undue pressure on both parties. The person explaining becomes frustrated and defensive, while the listener may feel burdened by expectations or unconsciously take advantage of repeated justifications. Peace, however, encourages mutual respect. It allows boundaries to be established naturally. It communicates without words that your time, energy, and emotions are finite and worthy of preservation. In this way, peace cultivates respect where explanation often invites further questioning. Peace also protects your integrity. When you are constantly explaining yourself, you risk diluting your message or compromising your principles to satisfy others' perceptions. You may embellish, rationalize, or apologize unnecessarily. Peace frees you from the cycle. It allows you to act with authenticity, knowing that those who truly matter will recognize your integrity without demanding proof. Over time, consistent peace builds credibility, reputation, and trust in ways that explanation cannot achieve, because explanation depends on acceptance, peace relies on truth. There is a deep internal freedom that comes with embracing peace over explanation. You are no longer trapped in a feedback loop of judgment, misunderstanding, expectation. You no longer bend to the opinions of every observer, nor do you feel compelled to manage perceptions that are not your responsibility. This freedom fosters creativity, focus, and self-awareness. Energy that was previously spent defending yourself can now be invested in growth, mastery, impact. Peace becomes both a sanctuary and a strategy. Peace is also a teacher. It demonstrates the futility of reaction and the power of composure. Those who demand explanations are often forced to confront the reality that not everything is within their control. They must accept ambiguity, tolerate uncertainty, and observe without interference. In this way, peace educates indirectly, shaping perceptions without confrontation or argument. People learn to respect your boundaries, appreciate your consistency, and acknowledge your value simply because you maintain a state of calm that cannot be provoked. Moreover, peace fosters resilience. Life is full of misunderstandings, criticisms, and unexpected challenges. Those who feel compelled to explain themselves constantly are more susceptible to frustration, disappointment, and emotional exhaustion. Peace provides a shield. It allows you to observe, reflect, and respond selectively. It grants you perspective, helping you discern which situations truly require attention and which do not. Over time, this approach cultivates emotional intelligence, patience, discernment, the qualities of those who lead with impact rather than an anxiety. Finally, peace amplifies influence. When others see that you do not need to justify, defend, or explain yourself to be respected, they are drawn to your stability. They begin to trust your judgment, follow your example, and value your contributions. Influence is rarely cultivated through incessant argument or insistence. It grows quietly, steadily, and imperceptibly through the consistency and composure that peace embodies. People are inspired by the confidence, wisdom, and grace that peace communicates. Far more than any verbal defense ever could, peace is more powerful than constant explanation because it centers you, protects your energy, preserves your integrity, fosters respect, and amplifies influence. It frees you from the burden of external validation, allowing your results, character, presence to communicate in ways that words never could. In a world obsessed with reaction, noise, and immediate defense, peace becomes a rare and potent force. Those who master it do not need to convince. They need only to exist in their purpose, allow in time, truth, results to speak on their behalf. Peace, in its quiet power, accomplishes far more than constant explanation ever could. Silence reveals who benefited from you without valuing you. It is one of the quietest yet most profound truths about human relationships, work, and influence. When you give constantly your time, energy, attention, support, and resources without hesitation or expectation, it is often difficult to see who truly appreciates you and who simply takes advantage. Presence can be comforting, and availability can be convenient. These qualities, when unguarded, often mask the reality of how much people truly value you. Silence, intentional withdrawal, or restraint is the mirror that shows the truth. When you are always present, always responding, always giving, your contributions become background noise. They are expected rather than acknowledged. People grow accustomed to your consistency and, over time, assume it is their right rather than a privilege. Your efforts, which once might have been met with gratitude, become routine and, in some cases, taken for granted. Your words, support, and resources lose the weight they once carried simply because they are never absent. People rarely reflect on what they have until it is no longer readily available. Silence, on the other hand, disrupts this pattern. When you stop giving momentarily, when you step back from constant availability, a space opens. In that space, people are confronted with what they once had but now lack. They begin to recognize the impact of your contributions. Not because you demanded recognition, because its absence speaks louder than any explanation ever could. This absence is not a punishment. It is a natural recalibration that allows the value of your presence to be felt in a way that presence alone never allowed. Silence also distinguishes between those who are truly appreciative and those who are opportunistic. Some people only recognize your worth when it benefits them directly. They lean heavily on your energy, your knowledge, your support, or your guidance without reciprocation or gratitude. They may take your patience, loyalty, or hard work for granted, assuming it will always be there. You withdraw intentionally or circumstantially, it becomes evident who depended on your efforts and who genuinely valued them. Absence forces reflection, and reflection often exposes the imbalance in relationships that proximity had hidden. In professional environments, silence can be equally revealing. A leader or team member who consistently carries weight, provides guidance, or mentors without complaint may be overlooked until they step back. Projects that run smoothly with their presence may falter without it, revealing just how essential their contributions were. Colleagues or supervisors who previously assumed their competence and reliability may suddenly notice gaps, highlighting the difference between being appreciated and merely being used. This revelation is often uncomfortable for those who took advantage of the effort, but invaluable for the individual recognizing their true worth. Silence also has an emotional function. Constant giving without pause can be exhausting and may even breed resentment. By stepping back, you create the space to protect your energy, reflect on your relationships, and reassess priorities. It allows you to detach from those who take without giving and focus on those who align with your values and respect your boundaries. The absence then becomes a tool not only for revealing truth, but also for self-preservation. It teaches both parties lessons, one in dependence, the other in autonomy and discernment. Importantly, silence does not require dramatic gestures or confrontation. It is not about punishing others or testing their loyalty. It is a calm and intentional choice to reduce overexposure, conserve energy, allow reality to reveal itself. The quieter you become, the more obvious your influence and contributions become to those who have benefited from you. People begin to recognize that what they once had was significant and not to be taken lightly. Silence provides the clarity that words often fail to deliver because actions, both given and withheld, carry greater weight than speech. Moreover, silence encourages accountability indirectly. When your efforts are no longer immediate or taken for granted, others are forced to step up, compensate, or reevaluate their dependence. They may discover gaps in their understanding, skills, or support systems. This indirect pressure creates a natural awareness of how much they relied on your presence, often without gratitude. Silence reveals patterns that constant giving conceals and shows the reality of reciprocal relationships versus transactional ones. On a personal level, silence fosters self-respect and empowerment. By withdrawing, even temporarily, you reinforce the idea that your energy, attention, contributions are not limitless. You acknowledge that your value is not defined by how much you give freely or constantly. Silence allows you to reclaim control over your life, priorities, and interactions. It teaches that your influence is significant not because it is demanded, because it is chosen and impactful. The process of revealing through silence is not instantaneous. It requires patience, discipline, and trust in timing. People often take a while to notice gaps and to process the absence. Some may never appreciate the significance of what you offered, which in itself is a lesson. Everyone is capable of valuing what they cannot take for granted. Those who do recognize your impact develop deeper respect, while those who fail to notice reveal themselves as opportunists. Both outcomes clarify your relationships and help you redirect your energy to more deserving connections. Silence also allows space for reflection on your own contributions. By withdrawing, you can objectively assess the value you bring and the ways in which it has been received. You can evaluate where your efforts are appreciated, where they are exploited, and where boundaries needed to be strengthened. This self-reflection is critical for growth, for setting limits, for protecting your long-term energy and emotional health. Ultimately, silence reveals who benefited from you without valuing you, because absence illuminates dependence. It exposes the difference between appreciation and entitlement. It differentiates between relationships that are reciprocal and those that are one-sided. Silence is a natural filter that teaches lessons without confrontation. It allows others to recognize your worth organically and compels reflection on the true impact of your presence. In conclusion, silence is not weakness, drawl, or avoidance. It is wisdom. It is an intentional and strategic choice that demonstrates the true weight of your contributions. By stepping back, by creating a space where your influence is temporarily removed, you reveal patterns that constant presence conceals. You see who respected you, who valued you, who simply benefited from your efforts without acknowledgement. Silence transforms perception into awareness, expectation into gratitude, and invisibility into recognition. It is in these quiet moments, away from overexposure and unnecessary explanations, that your true impact is revealed, not to you, but to the world that once took it for granted. Growth requires emotional discipline, not reaction. This is a truth that is often overlooked in a world obsessed with immediate responses, instant gratification, and visible progress. Growth is rarely born in the heat of emotion or the chaos of impulse. It is cultivated in the quiet moments of restraint, in the careful choices we make when provoked, and in the patience we exercise while navigating challenges. Emotional discipline is the soil in which true growth takes root, while reaction is often the fertilizer of stagnation, regret, and wasted energy. Emotional discipline begins with self-awareness. It is the conscious choice to observe your feelings rather than being carried away by them. Emotions are not enemies, they are indicators. Anger, frustration, disappointment, or fear signal areas where your expectations, values, boundaries are being challenged. Without discipline, these signals provoke immediate reactions. Words spoken too quickly, actions taken impulsively, or decisions made in haste. Reaction feels productive in the moment, but it often leads to consequences that hinder long-term growth. Emotional discipline allows you to acknowledge your feelings without letting them dictate your behavior. When you react emotionally, you surrender control. You allow external circumstances, other people's actions, and unpredictable events to dictate your state of mind. This gives power to variables you cannot control and diminishes your own agency. Growth, on the other hand, requires the ability to respond thoughtfully, to take ownership of your choices, and to act in alignment with your vision rather than your momentary feelings. Emotional discipline is the bridge between feeling and action. It allows you to process, reflect, and then move with intention. Emotional discipline also strengthens resilience. Life presents challenges, setbacks, and injustices that are unavoidable. Without discipline, it is easy to be consumed by resentment, frustration, or bitterness. Reaction may feel justified, but it rarely produces solutions or forward movement. Discipline trains the mind to absorb difficulty, assess it objectively, and take actions that lead to improvement rather than retaliation. Growth is measured not by how loudly you react to challenges, but by how effectively you learn from them and use them to refine your character, skills, Decisions. Consider the power of patience. Immediate reaction often seeks validation, closure, or relief. Emotional discipline teaches patience. It allows you to wait, observe, and assess before acting. In that waiting, you gain clarity, perspective, strategic insight. Growth is rarely linear, and impatience often leads to shortcuts, missteps, or misjudgments. Discipline ensures that your progress is sustainable, grounded, and aligned with long-term objectives rather than fleeting impulses. Emotional discipline also preserves relationships. When you react without thought, words and actions can harm the very people who matter most, sometimes irreparably. Anger spoken in haste, criticism delivered harshly, or decisions made in emotional turbulence create rifts that are difficult to repair. Discipline allows you to communicate with intention, to express needs and boundaries without damaging connection, to resolve conflict without allowing pride or ego to dominate. Growth is as much about relational intelligence as it is about personal achievement, and emotional discipline is the foundation of both. Another dimension of growth that requires discipline is focus. Emotional reactivity scatters energy. When you are constantly responding to slights, setbacks, or external pressures, you dilute your attention and energy. Discipline helps you prioritize what truly matters, directing your effort toward actions that advance your goals rather than toward futile battles or distractions. Growth is cumulative. It is the result of consistent, focused effort over time. Emotional discipline ensures that your energy is spent wisely, rather than squandered on reactive impulses. Moreover, discipline fosters confidence. Those who react impulsively are often driven by insecurity, fear of judgment, or the need to assert control in uncontrollable situations. Emotional discipline demonstrates mastery over oneself, communicates that you are guided by principles, not by emotion, and that your decisions are intentional rather than compulsive. Confidence grows. You realize that you can navigate adversity calmly, maintain clarity in the face of provocation, make choices that align with your purpose rather than your feelings. Growth also requires learning from failure, and this cannot happen without discipline. Failures often trigger strong emotional responses, shame, frustration, or self-doubt. Without discipline, these emotions can lead to avoidance, defensiveness, repeated mistakes. Discipline allows you to process failure constructively. It creates the mental space to analyze what went wrong, adjust your approach, apply lessons without being trapped in regret. Reaction to failure often blinds you to the opportunities it presents. Discipline illuminates them. Emotional discipline cultivates long-term vision. Reacting to daily irritations, setbacks, or criticisms keeps you anchored in the short term. It prevents you from seeing the bigger picture, from understanding patterns, and from making decisions that align with your ultimate goals. Discipline allows you to weigh immediate impulses against long-term benefits. Growth emerges when you consistently choose the actions that advance your mission, even when they require restraint, sacrifice, or patience. Finally, emotional discipline teaches self-respect. Reacting impulsively often leads to regret and self-recrimination. Over time, habitual reactivity can erode self-esteem and confidence. Discipline reinforces that your feelings, time, and energy are valuable. It allows you to navigate life on your own terms, maintain your integrity under pressure, grow without external validation or reaction-driven distraction. Who master emotional discipline develop an inner authority that cannot be shaken by external circumstances or other people's behavior. In essence, growth is the result of intentional, measured action. Reaction is impulsive, short-sighted, and often destructive. Emotional discipline is what separates those who move forward with purpose from those who remain trapped in cycles of frustration, distraction, and regret. Practicing discipline, you cultivate patience, resilience, focus, confidence, and self-respect. You learn to respond to challenges with clarity rather than chaos, to handle criticism with grace rather than defensiveness, to navigate setbacks with strategy rather than despair. Growth requires emotional discipline, not reaction, because your progress is dependent not on the world around you, but on the mastery you cultivate within. Your ability to regulate your emotions, maintain perspective, and act intentionally determines whether challenges become lessons or obstacles. Reaction may provide temporary relief, but discipline builds enduring strength. Reaction may seek immediate vindication, but discipline achieves lasting respect. Reaction may satisfy impulse, discipline ensures impact. Ultimately, those who grow steadily, consistently, meaningfully are not the loudest voices in the room. They are the most controlled. They do not respond to every provocation. They do not justify every action. They do not allow emotion to dictate their trajectory. Instead, they harness emotional discipline to channel their energy toward growth, purpose, and fulfillment. Discipline becomes their strategy, silence their ally, reflection their tool. Through this mastery, they achieve results that reaction could never produce, influence that impulsivity could never command, and growth that lasts a lifetime. Results speak louder than repeated words. This is a principle that separates true achievers from those who merely talk about achievement. In a world that rewards visibility, opinions, constant explanation, it is easy to confuse noise for progress. People often mistake talking promising or explaining for action. Words alone are powerless without follow-through. True influence, respect, and authority are built through results, through tangible outcomes that cannot be ignored, denied, or diminished. Words can persuade temporarily. Results endure. When you constantly explain yourself, justify your actions, or repeat your intentions, you rely on perception rather than reality. You depend on others' interpretations of your effort instead of allowing your work to speak for itself. This creates vulnerability because opinions are subjective, inconsistent, and fleeting. No matter how convincing your argument, someone may still doubt, misunderstand, or dismiss your words. Results, however, are objective. They exist independently of belief or recognition. A project completed, a goal achieved, or a life transformed is undeniable proof of effort, vision, and ability. Talking without delivering results is often exhausting and ultimately unproductive. You expend energy trying to convince others instead of directing that energy toward meaningful action. You fall into a cycle of explanation, clarification, justification that rarely changes perception, but always drains motivation. Repetition may momentarily placate skepticism, but it does not build legacy. Results, by contrast, eliminate the need for explanation. They communicate impact without embellishment or defense. Results also cultivate respect. People witness tangible outcomes. They naturally recognize the effort, skill, and discipline required to achieve them. Respect earned through results is durable because it is based on proof rather than opinion. Words, no matter how eloquent, can be questioned. Promises can be broken. Intentions can be misinterpreted. Results, however, carry weight precisely because they are visible, measurable, and undeniable. They command attention and establish authority without argument. In personal growth, results speak louder than repeated words because they demonstrate consistency over time. Anyone can make claims, offer explanations, or articulate dreams. Sustained action is the true indicator of progress. Small, consistent victories compound into achievements that validate character, determination, and vision. Words may inspire or persuade temporarily, but repeated, tangible outcomes solidify credibility. People remember results long after they forget the promises or statements that preceded them. Results are also a reflection of discipline. Talking about change is easy, producing change is difficult. Repeated words often reveal intent but not capability. When results are present, they prove mastery over time, effort, and circumstance. They show that discipline, persistence, and resilience are not theoretical. They are applied. Words without action are hollow. Results demonstrate substance. Moreover, results neutralize criticism. Critics can challenge explanations, question intentions, dissect reasoning endlessly. Words alone cannot counter skepticism completely, but outcomes speak for themselves. A completed project, a transformed team, or a personal achievement leaves little room for doubt. Results force acknowledgement even from the most reluctant observers. They remove the debate about effort because the impact is tangible. In relationships, results often matter more than repeated assurances. Constantly telling someone you care, will provide, or intend to support them is meaningless without consistent actions that reflect those words. People judge loyalty, love, and trust based on behavior, not statements. Consistent actions build reliability and credibility, while repeated words without corresponding behavior erode confidence. Showing up, keeping promises, delivering when it counts are forms of communication far more powerful than any explanation. Results also create momentum. Achievements, however small, inspire further effort and reinforce belief in your abilities. They build internal confidence that words alone cannot. When you see evidence of progress, your mind becomes fueled by proof, not theory. Each outcome validates your strategy, sharpens your focus, and motivates you to pursue bigger goals. Repeated words may create temporary excitement or intention, but results generate lasting momentum. In professional contexts, results are the ultimate metric of influence and authority. Leaders are recognized not for the frequency of their explanations or the clarity of their vision, for the outcomes they deliver. Teams respect managers who achieve goals. Investors trust founders who build sustainable results. Customers value brands that consistently deliver quality. Words may open doors, but results solidify partnerships, reputation, and credibility. Results are the currency of true impact. Results also teach lessons that words cannot. Action produces feedback, uncovers weaknesses, and reveals truths that theory alone never exposed. Repeated explanations often mask gaps in understanding or effort because talking can substitute for doing. Results confront reality directly. They highlight what works, what fails, and what requires adjustment. In this way, outcomes are both proof of capability and instruments of learning. Silence, in conjunction with results, becomes even more powerful. When you stop over-explaining, stop justifying, and stop promising, and instead focus on producing, your actions gain clarity and authority. People begin to notice what you accomplish rather than what you say. Your credibility becomes unshakable because it is built on evidence rather than perception. Repeated words fade into noise, but consistent results are remembered, celebrated, and emulated. In life, results cultivate self-respect. They show you what you are capable of when energy, focus, and discipline are applied intentionally. They provide validation that is independent of others' opinions. When you rely solely on words, your confidence is tied to acceptance, approval, acknowledgement. Results allow you to stand firm because your achievements are your own. They are undeniable markers of growth, capability, and commitment. Finally, results leave a legacy. Words are fleeting, explanations fade over time. Achievements, however, persist. They create a record effort, impact, and success that endures beyond conversations, arguments, or temporary recognition. People remember what was done, not what was said. Results are the ultimate proof of your value, influence, and effectiveness in both personal and professional spheres. In conclusion, results speak louder than repeated words because they are tangible, objective, and enduring. They communicate effort, discipline, and impact without the need for constant defense. Results command respect, build credibility, neutralize criticism, and foster momentum. They validate growth, establish authority, and leave a legacy that words alone can never achieve. In a world filled with endless talk, those who focus on producing outcomes stand apart. They understand that action outweighs explanation, execution surpasses intention, achievement silences doubt. Results are proof of capability. They are the ultimate voice, louder and clearer than any words could ever be. When you move in silence, your presence or absence becomes unforgettable. In a world obsessed with noise, visibility, and constant performance, silence is often misunderstood. People confuse quietness with weakness, invisibility with irrelevance, and restraint with indifference. Yet those who master the art of moving silently wield a power that cannot be overstated. Silence is not about hiding. It is about strategy, discipline, and intention. It allows your actions, influence, and impact to resonate far beyond words, announcements, or appearances. Moving in silence begins with awareness, requires a deep understanding that your energy, time, and presence are valuable resources. Not everyone deserves access to them, and not every situation warrants display or explanation. When you act quietly, you protect these resources. You choose to invest in what matters while avoiding the distraction, judgments, and noise that can dilute your power. Silent movement is intentional. It is the conscious decision to focus on progress over performance, substance over recognition, and results over applause. Silence allows your actions to speak for themselves. When you constantly announce your efforts, share your plans, and explain your intentions, you may gain temporary attention, but you risk diluting the impact of your work. People begin to see your presence as ordinary rather than exceptional because it is constant and expected. However, when you move quietly, your actions become noticeable precisely because they are deliberate and measured. You create anticipation, intrigue, and respect through the mere fact of your consistency and focus. There is also a profound psychological effect of silent action. Human perception is wired to notice contrast. People quickly adapt to what is abundant and familiar. They often overlook contributions that are always present. By moving quietly and intentionally, you create a contrast between presence and absence. When you are present, your impact is sharp, defined, and appreciated. When you are absent, your absence leaves a void that highlights the significance of what you brought into the space. Silence, therefore, amplifies your value in ways that constant noise and visibility never can. Silent movement requires discipline. It demands patience, self-control, and a long-term mindset. In the age of instant gratification, it is tempting to seek validation through social media, constant updates, or immediate recognition. Yet true influence is rarely instantaneous. It is cumulative, earned over time through consistent effort and results. Those who move silently understand that results outweigh words, substance outweighs showmanship, and timing is critical. They resist the urge to perform for acknowledgement and focus, instead on mastering the craft, completing the work, and allowing outcomes to reveal their impact. Silence also protects your reputation. The more you reveal, explain, or broadcast your intentions, the more vulnerable you become to misunderstanding, misjudgment, or criticism. By moving quietly, you retain control over how your influence is perceived. You avoid unnecessary scrutiny, gossip, and interference, allowing your work to be evaluated on merit rather than narrative. When your presence is quiet yet effective, people learn to associate you with competence, reliability, and authority, qualities that cannot be undermined by speculation or opinion. In relationships, moving in silence fosters depth and authenticity. When you are always reactive, always explaining, or constantly performing for others, connections can become transactional and superficial. Silence, however, creates space for genuine observation, reflection, and mutual respect. It encourages others to engage with your substance rather than your image, to recognize the value of your contributions without prompting, and to appreciate your presence without taking it for granted. People notice authenticity far more when it is subtle and deliberate than when it is loud and performative. Silent movement also cultivates resilience. Life is unpredictable, and challenges will always arise. Those who react impulsively or seek immediate recognition may become disoriented or discouraged when obstacles appear. Those who move quietly, however, maintain focus, assess situations thoughtfully, and respond strategically. Silence allows you to conserve energy, make better decisions, and act with clarity under pressure. Over time, this approach builds an inner strength that is visible even when external acknowledgement is absent. Absence, complement to silent presence, becomes equally powerful when you withdraw intentionally. Whether for reflection, strategy, or self-preservation, people are forced to recognize the weight of your contributions. The space left by your absence highlights the effort, influence, energy you provided. It is often in absence that true appreciation is revealed, as people feel the void created by your retreat. Moving silently teaches others the value of presence precisely because it is not taken for granted. It becomes unforgettable. Moreover, moving in silence aligns with the principle that influence is earned, not demanded. Those who shout their accomplishments, explain their actions repeatedly, constantly seek validation may gain short-term attention, but rarely lasting respect. Silent action, by contrast, earns respect organically. It demonstrates that your work, character, and discipline are self-sufficient. People notice without prompting, respect without being told, and remember without reminders. Your presence becomes a signal of competence and integrity. Your absence becomes a reminder of the gaps left by your influence. In professional and personal growth, the benefits of moving in silence are profound. Silent achievers often outperform those who rely on visibility because their focus remains on outcomes rather than recognition. They build network skills, authority quietly, avoiding the distractions of opinion, criticism, and comparison. Over time, Their influence compounds because it is rooted in substance rather than spectacle. When they step forward, their presence is commanding not because it is loud, because it is purposeful. And if they choose to withdraw, their absence leaves a lasting impression that echoes long after they are gone. Finally, moving in silence teaches patience, humility, and confidence. It requires trusting the process, valuing progress over applause, believing that your worth is inherent rather than externally validated. Silent movement demonstrates maturity and self-mastery. It shows that you do not need to perform for approval, explain for acceptance, compete for recognition. Your results, consistency, and presence naturally communicate your influence, while your absence underscores the value of what you provide. In mastering silence, you cultivate a presence and an absence that is unforgettable. In conclusion, moving in silence is not about invisibility or avoidance. It is a strategic choice that amplifies impact, preserves energy, and cultivates respect. Silent presence allows your actions to speak louder than words, while intentional absence highlights the value of your contributions. It requires discipline, patience, and focus, but it results in influence that is undeniable and unforgettable in a noisy world. Those who master silent movement distinguish themselves not by the volume of their words, but by the clarity, consistency, and impact of their actions. Their presence commands attention, their absence commands reflection, and their influence endures long after words have faded. Silence, in this way, becomes not just a strategy, but a signature, a mark that ensures your presence or absence is remembered forever.